thank you very much, Nicola, for that wonderful introduction. I won't defend my choices of the 50 great American places. We can debate that perhaps after my talk. I do want to thank the Sixth Floor Museum and Nicola Longford for hosting us tonight, and also the co-sponsors, Cheryl Stuttlefield Jones and Mary Pat Higgins from the Frontiers of Flight Museum and from the Dallas Holocaust Museum. You have some wonderful resources in this city and some great leaders in the museum community. And I have come to know these directors, Nicola, Cheryl, and Mary Pat, over the past year. And I have to tell you that there's no better group of leaders in the country than the people who are now leading these institutions. So I hope that you value them. And on this International Museum Day, that we especially pay tribute to what they're doing and how great their staffs are, because I've had an opportunity to meet many of the staff members of these museums. And I've also met several board members, both at the Frontiers of Flight Museum this afternoon and also the Sixth Floor Museum. And this evening, I've met several board members from the Dallas Holocaust Museum, and we'll be spending more time there tomorrow. So I'm just delighted to be here, very honored to be here. And I don't take honors for granted. I have learned early in my career that we must treasure every time we're given an opportunity to speak to a group like this or to be honored. And I remember early in my career, I was invited to speak to a county historical society in North Carolina. And after I gave my talk, they gave me a lifetime membership in the society, a lifetime membership. And I was very grateful. At that time in my life, it was worth something. And about a year after I received that honor, I got a letter that said, "Your lifetime membership has expired." So I learned not to take these honors for granted, and to be consider it a privilege. I do want to thank in absentia David McCullough, who has been a good friend of mine for many years, one of the greatest historians that we have in this country. And he wrote the foreword to 50 Great American Places. And I think the way he captured the spirit of my book in terms of the value of visiting and experiencing firsthand American history, I'm just very grateful to him. And he was the one who really suggested that I write this book. And when I decided I was going to write it, he said, "Write the book that you would want to read." And the book that I wanted to read, I had three goals in mind. One was what Nicola mentioned earlier, to promote historical literacy. And by that, I mean to understand why places and events and people are important. Not just what happened and when it happened, but why they are essential to understand the American experience. So historical literacy was an important goal. The second goal was to encourage heritage tourism, to encourage people to get out and see these places and experience the power of place. And for any of you who have been, especially where we are tonight, there is nothing, the authenticity, the power of this story of the Sixth Floor Museum that the Sixth Floor Museum tells cannot be duplicated by a chapter in a book. So you must get out and see these places. And I hope that the people who read 50 Great American Places will be encouraged to visit those places and other places nearby or in other places around the country, excuse me. And the third reason I wrote the book was to encourage historic preservation. The places that I write about are preserved because someone had the vision and the perseverance and the determination to save these places. And in the essay that I wrote about the Grand Central Terminal in New York City, I quote from Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, and I think this is an appropriate place to quote from Mrs. Onassis. And she became, in the 1970s, a great advocate for the preservation of Grand Central Terminal. How many of you have been to Grand Central Terminal in New York? Well, try to imagine that magnificent building, that magnificent space, compromised by a skyscraper that was proposed in the 1970s that was going to be placed right on top of the terminal itself. And structurally and architecturally, it would have been a tragedy. And Mrs. Kennedy Onassis at that time wrote this about in her advocacy for Grand Central. She said, if our children are not inspired by the past, how will they have the strength to fight for the future? And that simple declaration, to me, captures the value of historic preservation and also reminds us that history and historic preservation is not inevitable. It doesn't just happen because by osmosis or by inertia. It takes human decisions, human choices to make history and to preserve it. And I think I look around this building and realize the commitment that's been made to preserve not only the story of November 22nd, 1963, but also the building and the site in which it happened. And that's of critical importance. And I applaud all of you, and I think I'm talking collectively here to people who are determined and dedicated to telling the stories of American history and preserving our public memory. Now, how did I select 50 sites? And I know Nicola is going to press me on this subject, so I might as well get right to it. There's no excuse for leaving out this building, and so I will just from the beginning not try to make amends. But I will say I had four major criteria. Number one, I wanted to choose sites that represented every region of the country, not every state, but every region of the country. Number two, I chose sites that represented every time period from the pre-colonial times to the present day. Number three, I chose sites that were publicly accessible, either free to the public or a nominal entry fee. And especially in this year in which this is the centennial of the National Park Service, I chose many sites that were administered and managed by the National Park Service. I think that that's one of the great agencies of the federal government, and I hope even in an election year that the National Park Service is honored for its centennial and for the great work that they do. But number four, the fourth criteria is that I chose sites that reflected at least one or more of 5 themes, major themes that I believe have shaped American history and American identity. And those 5 themes are freedom, war, innovation, diversity, and land. Freedom, war, innovation, diversity, and land. If you can't remember that, it's FWIDO, if you, as the acronym for it. Freedom, war, innovation, diversity, and land. And the sites that I chose, and I'm going to show you a sampling, not all 50, but I'll show you several that represent these themes. So I think what we'll do is take you on a quick tour around America tonight.